as a member of it, I've bought every Call of Duty since, COD 3. I've played each one extensively. I guarantee you I've put more money and time into the Call of Duty franchise than the vast majority of you. I had 45 days played on MW2. And I remember not liking other games because I couldn't do as well on them as often. I remember going from COD to Halo Reach and getting wrecked and wishing the game was more like COD. I remember getting on Battlefield 3 and getting absolutely wrecked and wishing the game was more like COD. Do not pray, as I know so many of you have, for every game to be more like Call of Duty. Pray to be a better FPS player. I remember finally feeling like I had mastered COD. On Black Ops 2, I remember finally having what I considered a perfect combat record that I had been chasing for several COD games in a row, always coming up short in some area, but then finally achieving the full validation of my own ego. And why did I need that self-validation? And more importantly, why was it so important to me that other people could witness the accomplishment, that I could show them the combat record, that we can all show people what achievements and trophies we've gotten in what games, and leaderboards and gamer scores, on a game that will be entirely forgotten and completely irrelevant after its annual successor releases less than a year after you attained whatever it is you wanted to show off? Is it because modern society cuts off any access we have to real-life accomplishment for the first 18 years of our life? Is it because we spend the first 18 years of our life in a simulator called school that ultimately simulates nothing, that develops no real-world applicable skills or talents, that didn't even teach me how to do my taxes or cook my own food or open my own bank account? Is it because we're not allowed out of that simulator, there is no time or oxygen to pursue any activity other than the simulator, and it's illegal for us to work or make our own decisions, and we are not yet eligible to manage our own finances? We are less than people for those first 18 years. We are literally and legally property to the parents who birthed us without my permission, and our egos are defined by arbitrary letters that only measure our ability to hear our glorified babysitter say something and repeat it back to them and pretend that's learning, that will never be applied in any way except passing that ultimate symbol of human incompetence that we call a test, with every study and bit of research out there proving irrefutably that most of what we learn for the test we forget immediately after the test? Is it because at the age of 16, I and so many others internalized the D's and C's on our report cards and instinctively feared that we had no real value to the rest of society, that from an evolutionary standpoint we may not be worth the resources the herd allocates, and if that much is recognized we will be left to die? Call of Duty was a shield and a hospital and a safe place for rehabilitation for a generation of young men like me, like you, who grew up without any outlet to prove their self-worth to both the world and, more importantly, ourselves. Call of Duty, with its flaws, with the rage that accompanied it, brought me through one of the darkest periods of my life, a time when I saw no point to the present, when I hated being at school and I was relieved to go home, but I hated being at home and I was relieved to go to school, when I was disappointed every time I woke up because at least in my dreams I was free, when I even felt guilty for feeling miserable because culture told me these were first world problems and I should be thankful for my cage and the simulator, when I took no joy in anything, when I was ditching school so often that the district threatened to have my mom arrested, when I was showing up every day only so she wouldn't go to jail, when I did the schoolwork only because if I didn't they would hold me back and I'd be in the same position all over again, when I didn't understand why it was so hard for me to toe the line the same way as everybody else, when I hated myself because I couldn't. Call of Duty was an escape, because puberty in this century, age 13 to 18, is fucking miserable. A century ago, 2 centuries ago, 13 to 18, you're a grown man, you're a fucking adult, you're about to die. Nowadays, 13 to 18, we got the worst of both worlds. We got the worst of being a child and the worst of being an adult. We have urges we can't control, and we have no freedom to deal with them on our own accord. Call of Duty was an escape. For me, as it was for so many of you, as are all video games and books and television and movies and whatever other distractions we seek, whether at the bottom of a bottle or the crispy embers of a hot pipe. But more than an escape, it was a self-confidence boost, as I know it was for so many of you, even if it sounds too silly to admit. It brought my spirits up and gave me something to distract myself when nothing else would. It nurtured and restored a level of vitality to an ego that had wilted without sun for years. And I'll always be grateful for that. And I don't want COD to be on top anymore because I don't want other games to follow its lead, but I'll never call for Call of Duty's death, because I know there are other kids out there right now who still need that validation, even if it is artificial. But there inevitably comes a time when the illusion can no longer be maintained, nor should it be. There comes a time for growing up. After achieving that perfect combat record, I was bored, and it dawned on me that it had all been an ego-driven experience, and that without nothing left to chase, there was no fun left to be had. I mean, I could have chased the 3 KD, but then I'd have to play more defensively and use higher kill streaks, which would sacrifice the SPM and probably the win-loss, which was the hardest stat to keep positive. Content with achieving the goals I had set for myself, the game became hollow. It lost its meaning. I would play a match, and if I did well, it made no difference, because without the overarching set of goals, the gameplay itself became repetitive and monotonous, because that's what happens when a game is overly simplistic. That's how COD has to be, so that everyone can use it to soothe their own egos, because that's what's being sold. Not a game, but a psychological crutch. Self-validation of the ego, a self-confidence boost, antidepressants, drugs. So I gave other games a go, like Reach, like Battlefield 3, not because I needed more ego validation, because I didn't. I had escaped the simulator. I had my own place. I had a girlfriend, and that warm, fuzzy feeling I call freedom. I gave other games a try because I loved video games. Because they were fun. They are my hobby. And it's different once you start treating them like a hobby, as a source of entertainment, and not as a drug. Which is what Call of Duty has always been, and it's what draws so many people to it, even if they don't realize it. And of course, usually they don't, because if they did, it wouldn't work. When you judge it as an actual source of entertainment, as you begin to see games appeal based on their experiences, the novelty of trying something new, how much more fun and interesting those things are simply because you haven't tried them before, in this game or some other game. When you understand that the more difficult the challenge is, the more rewarding it is to overcome. I fell in love with Battlefield for these reasons. Fell in love with Halo. I've learned to love video games in a way that we all forgot for a while when we got drunk on the Kool-Aid that is Call of Duty. Battlefield can try to copy COD as they have with Hardline, but the best they'll ever be is a bridge or a runner-up. Hardline's unenthusiastic reception is a result of both EA and Visceral misunderstanding the fundamental appeal of both Battlefield and Call of Duty. They've learned that the hard way, and if they try this again with Battlefront or some future Battlefield, it's not because it's the best strategy financially, it's only because they are stupid. If you came to me with $60 and you said, Batman, should I buy Hardline or Advanced Warfare? I would tell you to buy Battlefield 4. Because gaming should be about more than sugar highs and magic tricks. It should be about pushing human creativity to its limits, building battlefields, not playgrounds. The For the Win query of the day is, what is your best memory on a Battlefield game, and what is your best memory on a Call of Duty game, and which memory do you enjoy more? Please remember to rate the video. This is Batman signing out.
And that's how you get mind blown really, really, really hard.